It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, April 22nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is excited to preview the playoffs for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms.
Yeah, it's good to talk about playoffs.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade, and I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, and of course here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to get into the last couple of games and the season overall for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, look ahead to the playoffs. We are also going to talk about kind of the long-lasting effects of John Tortorella's tenure as head coach, kind of how some of the players spun that and the search for a new coach at Locker Cleanout Day. One bit of side news, though, tangentially related to that, is that Jim Rutherford, who's the Vancouver Canucks GM, officially announced yesterday that they are not going to exercise the option on Rick Tocchet's contract. However, they are still in negotiations in terms of signing a new contract with him, but by not exercising the option, it gives Rick Tocchet an out. So the door isn't shut on Tocchet joining the Flyers, but there's like a crack there.
Oh, no, it's a huge
right
crack. I think the coaching search is over, to be honest. I think the Flyers could fake this coaching search if they want. All they basically have to do is call up Rick Tocchet's agent and say, we're going to give you X amount, which is going to be more than Vancouver wants to pay. And that'll be
they're completely nickel and diming the whole situation.
Correct.
Or
and that's it.
tuning and looning.
And that's all it's going to take.
Money,
right. And that's all it's going to take.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally that simple.
That is a big deal.
Yes.
And so, to be continued on that front.
Yeah.
But they meaning the Flyers, have said they're doing an exhaustive coaching search. So, I wouldn't expect anything to happen overnight. It
won't happen overnight. But I will tell you this: Rick Tocchet's not going to hang out that long while they do an exhaustive coaching search. So they either are going to sign him probably in the next couple of weeks, or they're not signing him at all. So, But he's not going to wait around.
No, I think weeks is a reasonable time frame for expectations. I think days is unrealistic, is what I'm saying.
But I think people think it might be longer. Like we even talked about, like it could be longer if it's really a truly exhaustive search. But I don't know if it's really going to be that anymore, honestly.
Yeah. Well, as far as what that search could look like and kind of how John Tortorella's tenure as head coach affects the players, some of them had some really interesting things to say related to that on Locker Cleanout Day. And Nic Deslauriers, one of those players. Now, we know that obviously he's not a cornerstone of this team moving forward, but he is a veteran, and a veteran who played a particular role, who was not always in the lineup. And I think sometimes how a guy like that relates to the coach and talks about the coach is a really important thing, because it kind of shows the road ahead for these younger players, right? And so he said that it really wasn't fun to go through multiple coaches the way he's had to on this team. But and as we know, he liked Torts, right? And that Torts provided a good foundation for him. However, they didn't really see eye to eye in a lot of ways.
And I think that had to do with player choices and things he was doing to other players, because he's a big teammate guy. He probably looked at what was happening with Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee and eventually Cam York. And, and I think those things rubbed him the wrong way. And they should. Like, he's a guy that definitely would have your back and stick up for you as a teammate. So I would expect nothing less. So that was the vibe that I got.
It is really telling in some ways. Now, of course, he kind of jokingly said he wasn't, he was looking forward to not having the rope test next year, which I'm sure
he meant it.
Are.
He was joking, but he meant it. Like he said, it wasn't fun for him because like everybody was going to see him coming in last. And, the big thing was finishing it. And at least Torts was positive about that, about finishing it. But my whole thing is, it didn't really make them faster for the year. All this was
No.
a one-day momentary test to kind of get you through something, like making you run through hot coals with your shoes off. But that's all it was. It was a stunt. It wasn't a long-lasting camp kind of item. And I think we learned that from Nic.
I think that while it didn't have a lasting effect on the ice, and it didn't affect
Right. Well, that's where I feel it should.
Well, I think for Torts, his goal in doing that, I think the breadth of the camp was to work on fitness, but that one particular test is designed to unite the players as a group against him to create cohesiveness in the group. And
Okay.
if you look at it that way, I think it accomplishes that.
So it
And
accomplished half of what it wanted, I would say.
yeah,
Okay.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But, some of the other players, it's like if you look at what Deslauriers said in isolation, that's one thing, but you look at kind of the collectiveness of what they had to say. And, we talked a little bit yesterday about what Sean Couturier had to say, but we didn't really dig into the aspect of it where he talked about that he felt like he was getting pushed aside and
Right.
didn't really understand the reason, or didn't agree with some of the
Didn't really get a
explanations.
reason.
Yeah, and that there just wasn't really, like, good communication there, and there wasn't, like, a good dynamic where Couturier felt like he could go to Torts and hash these things out, and, I think when Sean Couturier says, "The one thing that I'm proud of this season, or that's good about the group, is that no one's pointing fingers and guys still played hard for each other and wanted the best," and that
Mhm.
it was kind of like in spite of John Tortorella,
Right.
not just because of it, and because of some of the things like the rope test that we just talked about that are designed to create group cohesion. Like, they did it for themselves. They didn't necessarily need that in order to create that togetherness, that they played hard for each other no matter what.
Right. I mean, ultimately, yes, that's the truth. I think with, again, I saw people online, they were like, well, you're the captain, you should, be assertive and fix this. I think he was assertive as he could be. Again, I would think it would be a situation like if you and I went food shopping and I said, okay, let's go to Wegmans. And you're like, I'm never going to Wegmans. I've had horrible experiences there. We can go anywhere else. And so basically, what I equate to this is Torch was like, we're a run and gun team. And he looks at Sean Couturier and is like, you're not.
Right.
And treated him as such. And there was really no
Yeah.
middle ground there.
Yeah, and there just, like, wasn't a place for him until
No.
he kinda clawed his way back into the lineup, and
Right.
lo and behold, when he got into a good spot for him, he started playing his game more
Correct.
successfully. It wasn't some kind of a game that Torts wanted out of him, it was
Right.
what Sean Couturier's game is, and I
Right.
think that was the important part. I think, the other, players had other things to say, but I thought Travis Konecny had a good thing to offer as well in talking about then kinda looking ahead to the next coach, which is obviously the more important thing
Right.
to do, is to look forward, and that he said that this group is coachable. It doesn't really matter what style that management feels like they need to hire here, is that these guys are adaptable and they're excited to get back next year and take another swing at it and take that step forward. If you put that in conjunction with what Danny Briere had to say and some of the other players had to say about now starting to add and build on this team, I think that's a really important thing to say, and that I do think part of Torts' legacy is that it has created a coachable group in a lot of ways.
Sure, I think there's that part, and I would agree with that part was a success, and I agree with Travis. I think the only part that, was a little worrisome about Travis was he didn't really have an answer to post Four Nations, and then
Mhm.
was asked about the Olympics, like, "Hey, what will you do differently?" And he's really unsure. And that's a
Right.
little, and that
I mean,
part
that's
is a
on him though. That's, like, less, like,
no,
coach
no, it is on
related and
him,
more
but
him
I'm
related.
just bringing it up because we brought up Travis Konecny, and that's a worry I have for him
Mm,
because he's going to try and make
fair.
that team. And what is he going to do differently in the summer so this doesn't happen, or that he doesn't run out of gas at some point like that? Because he's going to go and empty the tank again overseas if he's on that team, right? Or at least try to empty the tank if they play him. But you get what I'm saying.
Right. Right. No, I mean, he wants to make that team. That's
Right.
for sure. I get that. Ryan Poehling, I thought offered some really good insight on Brad Shaw as well as, we just
Yeah.
said, well, maybe it'll be Rick Tocchet, but as of what we know now, Bradshaw is still technically in the running here. And I just feel like what he said was indicative of what most guys had to say about Bradshaw and that how smart he is and
Hmm.
how he knows this game so well. And that, from my perspective, like Ryan Poehling is another kind of player. There's the Nic Deslauriers kind of player, there's
Hmm.
the Travis Konecny kind of player, and then there's a Ryan Poehling kind of player who's a role player in the bottom 6 who absolutely came on strong at the end of the season and can contribute and can get some depth scoring for this team, but he's gotta be in the right position, and the coach is the one that gets them in the right position, and the fact that he was saying all those things about Brad Shaw and what he did when he got that head coaching opportunity, like, I feel like there's something to it because from my perspective, I don't think Torts, especially in the second half of the season, knew how to tweak the lineup and grind the axe in order to make things work. But Bradshaw could potentially do that.
So yeah, so I agree. I think that was all positive. Uh, Truth be known, I actually didn't sit in on that part because I had to go to the men's room, and when I came back, somebody was talking, and I didn't want to interrupt the group, so I had to find out after the fact what happened. That was the one person I missed. But I do want to say something about Ryan Poehling. It wasn't like he was a Torts creation. Ryan Poehling, like he was really good in juniors, like pre college. He was very good in college. I think his first NHL game, he either had 2 or 3 goals in that game, but then the injuries and the post concussion, everything sort of like derailed him. But he was a guy that was probably on track to be a top 6 guy, and now he's on track to be like a bottom 6 guy, and that's okay. Like that's just where his career took him, but he always had the speed and he always had a little bit of finish in him, but probably more. At that point he had a lot of finish in him, and then it's turned into what you see now. And so I think that's the part where he made the transition, is being more of a bottom 6 guy instead of hoping he could play in the top 6.
Yeah, that's fair. That is also fair as well. But there's so much more to talk about with this end of season stuff and the coaching search. And we're going to dig more into the blue line side of things. We talked, about some forwards today, but we're going to look at the blue line side of things. And that's where Bradshaw comes from
Yep.
on this team. We're going to do that tomorrow. In the meantime, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms have indeed clinched a playoff spot. We're going to talk about the tail end of the season, Alex Bump joining the team, other new guys, and preview the series against Wilkes Barre Scranton coming up next. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, and each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel full longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for my busy days, and I have them at my desk while I'm working. And a ways back, I had some friends over for a movie night. Instead of popcorn, we passed around bowls of a variety of their flavors, which everybody loved. But the Wonderful Pistachios, chili roasted no shells, and the sea salt and vinegar no shells were the biggest hits. They're so delicious and healthy too. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack a protein punch. So get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Like I said, on tomorrow's show, we're going to dig into the blue line and Bradshaw and all of that and what the Flyers decor might look like next season. Plus, we're going to answer your mailbag questions. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. Send us a message on any of our socials or comment over on YouTube. We already have some great questions in the queue already,
I'm
and I am
sure.
looking forward to all of that. The Lehigh Valley Phantoms wrapped up their season with a couple of games, with both of them being wins, which was a nice way to
Yep.
end the season. They won against Cleveland on Friday, at Hershey on Saturday. Now, The interesting thing about these two games is that the Cleveland game meant something to Cleveland.
Right.
They needed to win this game. And so, at least for 2 periods, Cleveland was playing all out, and then the Phantoms just took over in the 3rd period and won that game 7-4. And then on Saturday, this game meant nothing to anybody.
Right.
So there was backup lineups in for both teams. There was debuts. There was like guys from the ECHL getting their shots. So, you know, grain of salt. But there are some interesting things you can glean from that game as well. The Phantoms locked in their position after the Cleveland game into the 5th spot. They were just waiting to see who their opponent would be based on the results later in the weekend. It turned out it's Wilkes Barre Scranton. We'll get into that in the next segment, but that will be a 3-game series. And so it's going to be a very tight one in terms of the opportunity that the Phantoms have to advance. They wind up the season with a 36-28-8 final record, which if you had asked me like a few months ago if they would even have a
we
winning
weren't sure at
record,
all. Yeah.
not sure. So very pleased. And honestly, I will say that, we've seen in the AHL where, you've got new ELCs and guys get sent down because their NHL team doesn't make the playoffs and all these things. I would say that I don't know if they'll end up winning this playoff series coming up, but they have added so many good pieces to this lineup over the last month. And it started with the Lawton trade where they got Grabenkin. And I think he just added a little bit of fire to the lineup there, even if he's not like there yet in terms of skill. He does add that energy and that fire, and he takes a lot of shots, and he's very aggressive on the ice. And that added something to the mix. And I think Smith did too, to some degree, but less so than Grabenkin. However, they have since added Alex Bump, as we know, and Ty Murchison, and they sent all the other guys back down. So Ollie Lixel is back, and Rodrigo Abels is back, and they've sent Emil Andre. He did not play in these last couple of games because he was still with the Flyers, but he'll be in the lineup for the playoffs. And, of course, Jett Luchanko joining the team for the remainder of this season. And I just think like this team is in a much better position than I ever could have imagined. And it makes me so happy. Like I'm generally pleased with what's going on here.
Yeah, I like the personnel and I like what they were able to do. Not sure when you add this many personnel this quick, what that's going to do to their system, because that sometimes could foul things up.
Yeah, I mean, I get that to some degree. There's so many players, as we know, there's no roster limitations in the AHL. So they have like a lot of guys on the roster. But, as we mentioned on last Tuesday's Phantoms show, they were going to put in their playoff lineup on the Friday game, which they did against Cleveland. And I think it was a pretty solid lineup here. And I think that, we'll talk about it in the next segment in terms of what it'll end up being for the playoffs. But it's a pretty dialed lineup. And I think that the new guys are actually adjusting really, really well. And they're inserting themselves and playing simple games, but their own games. And I would say other than honestly, Jett Luchanko, everybody's doing real well.
No, they are. I think what we're going to see is singular effort versus team cohesion on the Scranton side. I think that's really what the battle is because they have a lot of good players too. So they're used to playing with each other longer. And I think that's the battle.
Yeah. So at their last home game, they had their MVP award, which is voted on by the team and players. And Ole Lixel and Parker Gahagan tied in that vote, which I think is really good. And I think those, Ole Lixel had the most points at the end of the season. Parker Gahagan saved their butts in net over the course of the season. So, I think that is a good thing as far as internal votes of confidence. Now, the new guys, Alex Bump, a goal and 2 assists in 2 games. He played his game. He does
Mhm.
exactly what he does well. He was strong on the forecheck. He was trying to make plays, but he was also trying to just find the open space, which was
Mhm.
really good. He did that on the power play goal. He scored against Hershey. So, he gets his 3 pro points in his
Mhm.
first 2 games, like, really good. He stole a puck on the forecheck, which led to, the Sawyer Bolton goal
Yeah.
versus Hershey, and that was his 2nd assist that he got over the 2 games, and I just was generally impressed. He didn't try to do too many crazy things, but what he did was effective.
Yeah, I liked what I saw. It's an early small sample size, so far so good.
Yeah, and then Ty Murchison continues to do his thing as well. He's just a physical defenseman
Right.
and who's very smart and plays a really strong defensive game. He doesn't score goals. This guy just doesn't score goals, right?
Right.
Gets a goal versus Cleveland, which was a nice shot from the point that
Yeah.
deflected off a
Well, he does have a
Cleveland
decent
player into
shot.
the net.
He really
He
does.
does. He does, and, he got an assist versus Hershey, and that's what we're saying is that these in a throwaway game for guys like him to step up and, like, get
Yeah,
a
it's a good
really good
confidence builder.
assist. Yeah, really pleased there, and that's where Jett Luchanko is this mixed bag, right? Still doesn't have any goals yet, 3 assists in 9 games at the AHL level so far. He's taken a couple bad penalties. He's still not shooting enough. He did not have any shots on goal against Hershey in a supposed throwaway game where you could just do whatever you felt like, right? He's just looking to pass all the time, and I think teams are figuring that out and they can defend it.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. I did look at a few things. On the plus side, I like his passing. I think his stick was
Mhm.
fairly active and his stamina is really good. On the
Yeah.
negative side, he's losing puck battles. He's a little timid on puck battles. He's losing faceoffs. Even in the OHL, he was 54% of faceoffs. I'd be surprised if he's running at 40 here. I don't even know if he is. The AHL doesn't even give those stats, so we don't know. Um, he doesn't seem to know yet what to do without the puck.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
a problem. He's a little bit of lost away from the puck, and while he has speed, he's losing some puck races there. It's not as pronounced as it was at the other level, and so, like, there's a whole level for Jett Luchanko to grow, and we may not see all of it or even some of it in the playoffs. Like, that's where it's at right now.
Yeah, and that's what part of the issue is, I think, for me, here, and I don't know. We'll see what he does in the playoffs, but I think that there's just a small concern. Again, it's only 9 games, and I get it, but I think that it'll be really important to guide his development appropriately, and he may need more time at the AHL level, again, which cannot happen until the tail end of next year.
Correct.
So it would be the year after that. He
Right.
may need more time, and I just want expectations set. Anything can happen next year, but I don't wanna, like, get ahead of ourselves with him, and I think that's the main point here.
Yeah, I mean, again, Torts would have put him in the NHL this year, which would have been terrible, and he would eventually would have gotten sent down anyhow, just because they needed a center. Even if you need a
Right,
center, you can't worry about using him. Uh, I looked at Shane Wright. Shane Wright was in the same situation Jett was. I think Seattle did the wrong thing with him by basically holding on to him for as long as they could, playing him in some of the games, sending him off to the World Juniors, and then, eventually sending him back. I don't think that was good. But Shane Wright now has played 95 AHL games, and he had 44 points this year and I think 19 goals. And I think that's the path that most guys have to follow, even if you're as talented as Jett Luchanko, because if you're playing center, that's what happens. Like, Pierre-Luc
right.
Dubois had to go
Center's
learn to play.
different than wing,
Yeah, see, Pierre-Luc Dubois had to go learn to play center. Well, he went back and learned how to play center. Like, this is what happens.
for sure. Alright, the Phantoms will, like I said, be facing the Wilkes Barre Scranton Penguins in the playoffs. We're gonna look at that kinda lineup and, preview that series coming up next.
The NHL playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists in the NBA or goals and assists in the NHL, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after puck drop, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. I would still go with the Avalanche. Avalanche. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
All right. So looking ahead to this playoff series, it's best of 3 that
Which I hate.
starts
Can we just say that?
tomorrow.
Yeah, I hate 3. 3 is just so hard. Like it's not a fair test.
Yeah, I think it just creates an extra round. And they have to shorten it because when you have the top 6
Yeah.
teams out of 8 making the playoffs, that
Yeah.
first round has to be 3 games. There's just
Yeah.
no other way to do it appropriately. But on the upside, because they are playing Wilkes Barre Scranton, the travel is very, very short, and so the Phantoms are able to get a home game out of this. So it'll be Wednesday on the road, Friday at home, and then Sunday on the road if necessary. The 2 teams have played 12 games head to head this season. In regulation, Wilkes Barre Scranton has won 7 of them, and the Phantoms have lost 2. In overtime games, they each won 1 of those games, and the Phantoms won the lone shootout game, which obviously doesn't matter in the playoffs, right?
Right.
Now, if you look at the 7 losses that they had in regulation, 3 of them were blowouts. Really bad losses, and the rest were 1 or 2 goal games. So, it's been an uphill battle against Wilkes Barre Scranton this year, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of that is they do have some players who I think are really advanced. I think Rucker McGroarty is really advanced. I think Vasily Provoronov is very advanced. And so these guys are like a sniff away from the NHL. And so like when you have guys like that, that's always going to be a battle. And then they always have really good, tried, true, tested players. Like Joel Blomqvist is a really good goalie, very, very solid.
Yeah.
Like they have a lot of solid guys in there. They've got, Hollowell, who used to be with the Leafs. It's not like he's bad. He's just a really, really good AHL player. So it's like the Phantoms have better young talent, prospect talent, and maybe even, close to them regular talent wise, but they have a lot of good guys in key positions. That's the thing that I see about them.
Yeah, and they sent down like 3 or 4 guys at the end of the Penguins season to Wilkes Barre Scranton. So in a similar vein that the Flyers did. So, they did beef up their lineup for the playoffs here. We had mentioned about the lineup for the Phantoms. I think what we're looking at here is a top line where Jacob Gaucher is going to center that with Ole Lixell and potentially Zaid Wisdom, but I don't know what's going to happen there because Alexei Gendron was hurt in the game on Friday, and he did not play Saturday, but half the lineup didn't play Saturday.
Right.
So
It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. We'll see if he'll check back into the lineup or not. That could affect where
Sure.
Zaid Wisdom is on that right side there. I do like Luchanko centering a line of Alex Bump and Anthony Richard. I think that's a
Yeah,
good.
sure. A lot of speed. Bump can make
Yeah.
some things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good line.
And then, Gendron had been on the wing with Abels' line and Gorbenkin, which is, again, that's a good third line for the
It is.
Phantoms, I think. Again, we'll see what happens with that injury.
Right.
The question for me is, with Emile Andre coming back in on the blue line, who sits? Because we have McDonald Belpedio, which has been a solid pairing,
Right.
especially for the second half of the season. On Friday, he played Ginning and Grons together. My spidey sense says one of those two is going to sit. But they could also sit Ty Murchison, who
Right.
was just maybe getting in some throwaway
And I think
games.
that's who I would sit.
That's probably who I would sit. It's like the only nagging thing was that he's actually shown out really well. And
But it could be
I
some
just-
fool's goal too, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. So, probably Murchison sits and then Andre will go up in the lineup and they'll shift. Maybe they'll put Andre with Grons, and they'll move that around a little bit. But I don't think who the pairings are together are necessarily as important as the fact that they have solid pairings
No, they do, and they
at
have
this
more
point.
than enough. I think they need to keep
Yeah.
Samson in there, though,
Yep,
because
they
he's
do.
really done well the second half, and for development's sake, I think that's smart. Gleason, like, I felt like they probably got him for this, and if he doesn't get used in this, it kinda makes me wonder. Me personally, I might play him. And they won't do this, but I might play him over Belpedio. Like, it's just the thing is, Belpedio, it's
That's
like,
possible.
I mean, Gleason is like he's a different kind of guy, but I think he's more made for playoff hockey, even AHL playoff hockey. But I think they probably won't do that. But it makes me wonder if you don't use him, why he's there, because he's that
Well,
guy.
Gleason had been hurt for a long stretch, and
Yeah,
when he came back, it took him a while to get warmed up, but he's actually played really well in the last 5
yeah,
games
he's
and has
good.
gotten some
He's
points
really
on the
good
board.
AHL player.
Yeah, so I think you're right that it's a Belpedio or Gleason pick, and I'm guessing they'll go with Belpedio, but I wouldn't if they went with Gleason, that would be good too.
Like a
The
couple of
other
years ago,
question,
sorry, I was just gonna say a couple of years ago, he had 5 points in 8 games. Like, he could bring it
yeah,
sometimes. 8
he
playoff
can.
games.
Yeah, so, like, the other question is they had Cal Peterson start the Friday game in net versus Parker Gahagan, and my guess is that despite the fact that Parker Gahagan saved their bacon this season, they're gonna go with Peterson in the playoffs just because he has that experience at the higher level. But I don't know that I would do that, but I understand the logic.
Yeah, I guess I get the logic. I'll go with that.
But, we'll see how it goes.
We will.
And we will know by next Tuesday whether or not the Phantoms have advanced in the playoffs, and we'll talk about it early next week. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. And as a reminder, we are having that mailbag on tomorrow's show. So let us know your questions or Flyers thoughts on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the all new Locked On NHL Game Night. It's every game, every night until that Stanley Cup is awarded. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on the Locked On NHL channel on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.